Kimberly Kates entered the world on March 6, 1967, in Toledo, Ohio. She was born to James and Lynette Piasecki. Her family included two brothers, Jeff and Scott, along with a niece named Nicole and a nephew named Christopher. Kimberly was tall and slender, her dark hair framing eyes that gleamed beneath a bright, welcoming smile. David Kates, her husband, portrayed her as a woman brimming with energy and life, her smile infectious, her personality radiant. Nursing was more than a career for Kimberly. It was a calling. She earned her degree from Pima Community College in Tucson, Arizona. Her compassionate nature found its perfect outlet in nursing, where she touched countless lives with care and kindness. In 1997, she married David Kates. A year later, their daughter Jamie Lynn was born. The bond between mother and daughter was extraordinary. David conveyed that their connection transcended a simple mother-daughter relationship. They existed almost as one. Kim was a warm, affectionate mother deeply devoted to Jamie, who treasured every moment they shared. Kimberly loved Jamie without condition. Family friends noted the shared compassion both mother and daughter carried, always watching out for others. In 2004, the Kates family moved first to Baltimore, Maryland, before finally settling in Mount Vernon, New Hampshire. Mount Vernon was a small, secluded colonial town nestled on the border with Massachusetts. By 2009, its population barely reached 2,000. At the time, Mount Vernon was considered exceptionally safe, with no violent crime recorded in over 160 years. The Kates resided at 4 True Road in a spacious 4-bedroom home surrounded by a lush garden and woodland. Kimberly's nursing career spanned several New Hampshire hospitals, including St. Joseph's Catholic Medical Center and Milford Medical Center. Family described her as a loving wife, devoted mother, and a vibrant personality who treasured time with her loved ones. At the center of this story, Kimberly was just 42 years old. Steven Spader was born on November 9, 1991, into a troubled start with a drug-addicted mother and an unknown father. Shortly after birth, Child Protective Services removed him from his mother. Within 5 days, he was adopted by Steven and Christine Spader. When Steven was 2, his biological mother had another child. The Spaders nearly adopted this sibling, but custody ultimately went to the biological father. Steven grew up in Brookline, Massachusetts, in a middle-class environment. He participated as a Boy Scout, mingled with other children, and attended the local schools. Steven had a passion for musical theater and once played Daddy Warbucks in a school production of Annie, yet academics were a struggle. His parents grew increasingly concerned about his future, hiring an advocate to ensure he received an individualized educational plan. They even borrowed against their home, spending tens of thousands on leadership and residential treatment programs in New York and Utah. Steven attended Hollis Brookline High School but dropped out at 17. He saw numerous psychologists and psychiatrists as a teenager with diagnoses including bipolar disorder and major depression. In 2008, he was hospitalized twice for mental health reasons. That same year, he briefly enrolled in Adirondack Leadership Expeditions, a camp for troubled teens. But counselors described him as a fragile house of cards needing more intensive care. Trouble with the law followed Steven Spader frequently. He once fled home with a girl he had impregnated, prompting police to spend days searching for him. Records show he threatened his father with a knife, ransacked the family home, stabbed countertops, and threw food. He was also found in possession of marijuana. In his own words, Steven believed drugs and crime were cool. He boasted to classmates about drug use and fabricated tales of gang involvement and murder. His string of girlfriends endured mistreatment and violent outbursts from Steven. Christopher Gribble appeared as a devout Mormon nurturing dreams of becoming a church missionary. Working as a handyman at his local church, Christopher seemed ordinary on the surface, yet his Facebook posts revealed a far darker persona. One post confessed that while everyone has a light and dark side, his extremes were severe. He claimed that if someone was liked, he was kind and sweet, but if he lost control, it was a terrifying sight. Christopher also served in ROTC and often showcased his fascination with knives and swords online. Socially awkward, he earned the nickname Creepy Chris from one of Steven's ex-girlfriends due to his unwelcome lewd comments toward women. Quinn Glover lived in Amherst, the city nearest to Mount Vernon. Several Mount Vernon residents knew Quinn and his family from church, where he was known for singing and playing guitar. William Marks, who went by Billy, was also part of this circle. Little is known about Billy beyond the fact he attended the same high school as Quinn and was described as insecure and angsty. Steven Spader, Christopher Gribble, Quinn Glover, and William Marks forged a close friendship between ages 17 and 19. By late 2009, those around them noticed the four were tormented, depressed, angry, and adrift in life, perhaps seeking solace in each other. In September 2009, Steven declared the formation of a brotherhood among them, calling it the Disciples of Destruction, or DOD. He described it as a group of like-minded individuals ready to commit reckless acts. The DOD held frequent meetings where members openly discussed dark fantasies of breaking into homes and murdering their occupants. Steven Spader chillingly described his plan to incapacitate victims using chloroform, restrain them, and extract financial information through torture before ending their lives. He took charge setting strict goals for the Disciples of Destruction DOD, outlined in a document emphasizing loyalty among the group. The group even had a distinctive logo, one that Steven had permanently inked across his back. On October 3rd, a month later, Steven confided in his friend Autumn Savoy about a planned operation set for that very night. He then instructed other Daughters of Darkness members, Christopher Gribble, William Marks, and Quinn Glover, to meet him and to bring machetes, an axe rope, and plenty of trash bags. Christopher would later reveal this mission was a brutal test designed to prove their willingness to do whatever it took. Once assembled, the group searched for instructions on making chloroform using Autumn's computer. Their search revealed they needed ice bleach and acetone, prompting Quinn to step out and buy the necessary supplies. In an attempt to deceive, Quinn messaged his mother and girlfriend claiming he was at a party and needed acetone to clean a pocket knife, but he failed to acquire it. At around 4:00 a.m. on October 4th, the Daughters of Darkness piled into Christopher's car with Steven behind the wheel, heading toward Trail Road. Steven had deliberately chosen this secluded route, knowing the homes here sat far apart from each other. They randomly selected house number 4. Inside, Kimberly Kates and her 11-year-old daughter Jamie lay asleep in the master bedroom. David Kates, the husband, was away on a business trip, leaving the women alone. Neighbors described Kimberly as meticulous about safety, always locking doors. Yet that night, the living room window was left open. Before entering through the window, the attackers cut the home's power, plunging the house into darkness. Using the faint glow of an iPod flashlight, the 4 men crept toward the master bedroom. They gathered silently outside the bedroom door. Steven eased the door open and cast the beam inside the pitch-black room. Believing the room empty, he whispered to Christopher that no one was there. Disappointed, the group began to retreat. But then from the bed, Kimberly suddenly sat up and called out, asking if it was Jamie. Startled, Steven dropped the iPod flashlight and moved toward the right side of the bed where Kimberly's voice had come from. Christopher followed, positioning himself on the left side of the bed. William and Quinn waited in the hallway, covering their ears as Steven's machete began pounding against the bed with savage force. Kimberly and Jamie awoke to screams echoing through the room. Jamie witnessed her mother's brutal attack and threw herself over her, desperate to shield her from the onslaught. Christopher forcibly pulled Jamie away and repeatedly stabbed her in the face and chest, aiming to reach her heart, despite the darkness obscuring his vision. Steven relentlessly hacked Kimberly 32 times, inflicting wounds all over her body. A post-mortem revealed her skull was split in 2, brain exposed in a grisly testament to the violence. Her arms bore injuries consistent with a desperate defense, the coroner concluding she had been conscious and alive for every blow. Steven then slit Jamie's throat with such brutal force that her jaw broke further, mutilating her head and severing parts of her left foot. Christopher seized the battered girl and threw her against the bedroom door. Miraculously, Jamie lay still and silent, hoping to convince her attackers she was dead. After ransacking the bedroom and house for valuables, the 4 men fled Monticello, leaving only devastation in their wake. Summoning every ounce of strength, Jamie found a piece of paper marked with the Department of Defense logo and, believing it safe, staggered to the phone. She managed to dial 911 before collapsing with a heavy thud onto the floor. 15 minutes later, the first officer arrived at the scene. Peering through the window, he saw Jamie lying motionless, drenched in blood, her face and foot gruesomely wounded. Without hesitation, the officer forced the door open and rushed to her side. As she trembled and whispered that she feared her mother was dead, he carried Jamie outside and ascended the stairs to find Kimberly lifeless, her body naked from the waist down, her head savagely mutilated. An ambulance swiftly transported Jamie to a hospital in Massachusetts. She spent over 2 weeks in intensive care, enduring multiple critical surgeries to survive. A doctor later testified that any delay in calling 911 would have cost Jamie her life due to a punctured lung. Meanwhile, the Daughters of Darkness fled Mount Vernon, seeking refuge at Autumn Savoy's home in Hollis. They confessed their horrific deed to Autumn, who, instead of alerting authorities, urged them to dispose of their bloodied clothes and clean their weapons. The killers and their accomplices then drove to the Nashua River, disposing of their garments in the water. Using a Burger King bag, they meticulously wiped down their weapons to erase traces. About an hour later, Christopher updated his Facebook, boasting about the night with Steven and praising the show Dexter. The following morning, Steven and Christopher scoured the internet for news of their crime. They discovered Jamie had survived a fact that left them frustrated and bitter over their failed objective to kill everyone. Undeterred, they began plotting their next violent attack. Within just 14 hours of the brutal attack, law enforcement zeroed in on 4 suspects: Steven Spader, Christopher Gribble, William Marks, and Quinn Glover. Their profiles matched the chilling description provided by Jamie Kates, the surviving victim. Investigators' certainty deepened when authorities caught these men attempting to pawn jewelry that belonged to Kimberly Kates, linking them directly to the crime scene. During questioning, Quinn Glover was asked to recount his whereabouts in the early hours of Sunday, October 4th. He confirmed his presence in Mount Vernon that morning, specifying his location. Though uncertain of the address's occupants, he acknowledged it was a home. In fact, 4 Trail Road was the residence of Kimberly Kates, her husband David Kates, and their daughter Jamie Kates last October. When questioned about the occupants of the house, the witness admitted he did not know them nor their names. Pressed further, he confirmed he was not alone during the incident, but accompanied by William Marks, Christopher Gribble, and Steven Spader. He acknowledged entering the house alongside the 3 men. The method of entry was a forced break-in. Inside, he revealed 2 victims were present, a woman and her young daughter. Both occupants were subjected to violent attacks. Though he did not witness the assaults firsthand, he was present during the attacks. The victims were found inside their bedroom at the time. He identified Christopher Gribble and Steven Spader as the men who entered the bedroom first. Both men were armed upon entry. Steven Spader wielded a machete, a weapon that would soon become grimly infamous. Under scrutiny, the witness pointed out Spader in the courtroom, dressed in a blue suit beside the table. Christopher Gribble was also seen entering the bedroom armed with a knife. After the men entered, chilling sounds emerged from within. At first, a voice called out, asking, "Jamie, is that you?" A child responded, confirming it was her mother. What followed were screams and desperate cries for help, punctuated by heavy footfalls and thuds. After the terrifying sounds ceased, the witness saw Steven Spader emerge, still clutching the bloodied machete. The weapon was stained with blood and matted hair, a haunting testament to the brutality inside. Spader chillingly declared that they had made enough noise because 2 people were dead. The date was October 6th, when all 4 men were arrested on murder suspicions and detained at Valley Street Jail in Manchester, New Hampshire. During police interviews, Steven Spader deflected blame onto his accomplices, demanding they face the death penalty. In a disturbing admission, Christopher Gribble confessed that he and Spader had long harbored a desire to kill. Gribble expressed disappointment at feeling no emotion during the attack. He later revealed regret that the child survived, stating he would have killed her if he had known. At one point, Gribble inquired if Jamie was in a coma, showing a twisted curiosity about her condition. Autumn Savoy was subsequently arrested for aiding in destroying evidence and providing a false alibi. Savoy claimed the men had spent the entire night at his home in Hollis. All 4 men awaited trial behind bars, held on $500,000 cash bail. In the weeks before trial, Spader lashed out publicly. He wrote a letter to the telegraph railing against assumptions of guilt and accusing the media of brainless conformity. He also attacked the victim's widower, David Kates, for criticizing a school yearbook that included 2 of the accused men. Spader insisted guilt or innocence belonged to the court, not to grieving family members. On November 9, 2010, the jury delivered their verdict. Steven Spader was found guilty of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit burglary, witness tampering, and attempted murder. Under questioning, it emerged that Steven Spader admitted they had made enough noise to alert others because 2 people had been killed. He confirmed chillingly that 2 victims lay dead. This revelation came after he exited the bedroom, sealing the grim scene inside. The bloody machete coated with hair and gore stood as a brutal testament to the violence. On October 6th, authorities arrested all 4 men, holding them at Valley Street Jail in Manchester, New Hampshire, under suspicion of murder. During interrogation, Steven Spader deflected blame onto his accomplices, insisting they deserved the death penalty for their actions. Christopher Gribble, in a rare moment of candor, confessed to detectives that he and Steven had harbored a dark desire to kill for some time, expressing frustration that he felt no emotion on the night of the crime. Police records reveal Gribble's haunting regret, not for the violence itself, but for sparing the child, condemning her to live with the aftermath. He admitted that had he known the child survived, he would have ended her life. His morbid curiosity surfaced again when he inquired if Jamie Kates was in a coma, stating he wanted to know how she was doing. In a disturbing contradiction, Gribble expressed a hope for her recovery. Meanwhile, Autumn Savoy was taken into custody for aiding the cover-up and fabricating an alibi, claiming the group spent October 4th at his home in Hollis. All 4 men faced $500,000 cash bail and were held separately in different prisons as their trial loomed. In the weeks before his trial, Steven lashed out at the public protesting innocence in a letter to the Telegraph, calling on people to think independently and rejecting what he called media-driven assumptions. His venom extended toward David Kates, the widower of Kimberly, criticizing him for objecting to the inclusion of William Marks and Quinn Glover in the Sue Hagan High School yearbook, insisting that guilt or innocence belonged only to the court. Steven declared that only a judge and jury fully informed should decide the fate of the accused. On November 9, 2010, the court delivered its verdict. Steven Spader was found guilty of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit, murder conspiracy to commit burglary, witness tampering, and attempted murder. Sentenced to life without parole, Judge Gillian Abramson condemned him to spend his remaining days behind bars, declaring, "You will stay in that cage for the rest of your pointless life." Amid the trial, Steven was overheard asking his lawyer if the jury might sing happy birthday to him as the proceedings coincided with his own birthday. David Kates stood before the court and delivered a heartfelt victim impact statement. He expressed profound sadness that the trial would become the lasting memory of Kimberly Kates, a woman whose life was far richer than this tragic conclusion. Kimberly's beauty and spirit would forever remain etched in the hearts of those who loved her. Her essence would live on in each family member, a blessing for all who had shared their lives with her. David then turned his thoughts toward his daughter Jamie. Jamie had been forced to endure horrors no child should ever face. The emotional scars Jamie bore were deep, immeasurable, and still unfolding. Yet friends and family rallied around her, hoping to lighten the unbearable burden she now carried. David mourned the milestones Kimberly would miss: prom nights, graduations, wedding plans, and the support Jamie would need through motherhood. Though Kimberly was gone, Jamie and David still had each other. Their family, though shattered, would survive this senseless attack and find a way to thrive again. As the courtroom proceedings drew to a close, the judge acknowledged David Kates for his dignified and composed presence throughout the ordeal. Day after day, week after week, he had borne witness to unimaginable suffering with grace. The judge expressed gratitude for his strength. She assured David that his steadfast presence in the courtroom would echo in the hearts of all who had followed the case. The judge then addressed Jamie directly. She welcomed Jamie, warmly expressing relief at finally meeting her. Her presence brought comfort to everyone in the courtroom, offering a glimpse of hope amid tragedy. The judge reassured Jamie that Steven Spader and his accomplices would never harm her again. She wished Jamie better days ahead, free from fear. Following the trial, Steven Spader was transferred to New Hampshire State Prison to begin his life sentence. On April 22, 2013, Steven appeared at a resentencing hearing. His lawyers argued that his original sentence was cruel and unusual, given he was only 17 at the time of Kimberly's murder. They emphasized his history of mental illness, hoping to secure a reduced sentence from Judge Abramson. Yet Steven himself rejected these attempts. He asked his attorneys not to seek leniency. In his own words, he wanted to fully accept responsibility for his horrific actions. He described himself as the most sick and twisted person one could meet before reading an apology letter to 14-year-old Jamie and the grieving Kates family, all present at the hearing. The letter, dismissed by the family as deeply insulting, stated that through his impulsive acts, Steven had destroyed lives and torn families apart. He expressed sorrow for the pain he caused, yet he made clear he did not expect forgiveness, nor felt he deserved it. The prosecutor countered, highlighting Steven's psychopathic nature. This was no passing phase, no youthful mistake. It was an unchangeable part of who he was. Judge Abramson agreed, extending his sentence by 76 years on top of life without parole, ensuring he would never walk free. It was impossible to deny the intentional cruelty, especially when he described stabbing someone. He revealed how he cautiously opened a door peering inside and initially thought no one was there. His companions, Quinn Glover and William Marks, agreed and started speaking louder, believing their fears were unfounded. Suddenly, Christopher warned them to be quiet, sensing someone inside, and pushed the door open further. It was then that Kimberly Kates woke up. Visibility was poor, obscured by an iPod lying nearby. Though generally possessing good night vision, the witness's view was blocked. Despite the obstruction, they saw someone sitting up on the left side of the bed as viewed from the foot. Facing from the hallway, this was indeed the bed's left side. A female voice called out, asking if it was Jamie. The atmosphere shifted into something surreal and hard to describe. In an instant, Steven Spader tossed the iPod aside, dropped to the floor, and moved toward the bed's right side. Without conscious thought, the witness found themselves moving to the opposite side of the bed. An unusual moment unfolded when Steven Spader abruptly threw an iPod aside. He collapsed to the floor and moved toward the right side of the bed in a manner that unsettled observers. Meanwhile, another figure was seen walking toward the opposite side of the bed, adding a layer of mystery to the scene. In a moment that seemed instinctual, the subject moved toward the other side, driven by a force beyond conscious thought, as if the decision required no deliberation. The exact moment when the knife was drawn from its sheath remained elusive, lost in a fog of fragmented memory. At some point, the cold steel found its place firmly in the subject's hand. Though the act of pulling the knife out escaped clear recollection, there was an undeniable awareness of its presence in the grip, a silent witness to the unfolding violence. Crossing to the other side of the bed, he noticed the girl stirring on the right side. Though her words were hazy, the lingering impression was that she was groggy and disoriented. She may have uttered something resembling "Mommy," a faint echo amid the chaos. Then Steven Spader began striking violently at the bed. Whether he could see clearly or not, it was evident by the sound of thudding against blankets that his blows were relentless. Screams pierced the air until a sudden noise silenced some of the terror. Moments later he reached in, blindly stabbing at the form before him. Though his vision was obscured, an uncanny certainty guided his attack. How he struck the target remained a mystery even to him. When asked if he stabbed while Spader hacked, the answer was unequivocal. Spader never ceased his assault. His relentless fury echoed without pause. There was no momentary break in the violence. He only reached in, stabbing in unison with Spader's hacking. Remarkably, he avoided injury despite the swinging machete. Reflecting back, he marveled at how he managed that feat. During interrogation, when told a warrant for his arrest was being prepared, he inquired about the charges. In a chilling turn, the notion of capital murder was introduced, implying the gravest consequences. At first, he did not grasp the meaning of capital murder. Though the death penalty had been mentioned earlier, the connection had yet to crystallize in his mind. This was confirmed as part of an earlier interview segment. The subject recalled that death penalty references had surfaced then. Investigators had made allusions to the ultimate punishment. Specific details escaped his memory. In the section denying involvement, the death penalty had been mentioned. That was the moment when the gravity of the situation pressed down. Returning to the ongoing conversation with the interrogator named John, John clarified that capital murder carried the possibility of execution. Pausing, the weight of the death penalty settled in his mind. He sat quietly contemplating the bleak prospect. At that moment, the interrogator seemed to have no further questions. He remained silent, restless. Pacing back and forth across the room, the tension mounted. The subject began opening up about his troubled family past, revealing a childhood marked by hardship. The reasons for this confession were unclear even to him. He sensed that some statements from investigators hinted at knowledge they shouldn't have, suggesting an informant. Certain comments triggered a defensive reaction. He recognized that some conclusions drawn were based on inside information. Some assertions were outright false, yet others struck too close to the truth to be mere guesswork. For example, the claim that William Marks had been trapped in the basement was something the crime scene could not reveal. Another striking accusation pertained to whether weapons had been buried, a secret known only to Steven Spader and the subject. This revelation made him realize the investigators might have full knowledge of their actions. At that point, resistance seemed futile. He concluded that if he faced the death penalty, the ordeal would simply end with his death. Within minutes, his emotions swung wildly between rage and sorrow. In a disturbing admission, he confessed the torment he imagined inflicting on his mother, an account corroborated by Christopher Gribble, who testified it originated at a cadet camp in 2006. With a quiet voice, the confessed killer revealed to the jury the dark thoughts that haunted him for years before the murder of Kimberly Kates. Gribble claimed insanity at the time he brutally murdered the Mount Vernon mother and gravely wounded her daughter. He described feeling like an outcast throughout his teenage years. He placed partial blame on his parents for homeschooling him. He told the jury he longed for a normal social life. It became clear he often fantasized about killing his mother. Under questioning from defense attorney Donna Brown, he admitted the difficulty of hearing her testify. Observers noted visible distress as she recounted events. When asked if he felt urges to harm her during testimony, he confessed those feelings were strong. He acknowledged the possibility of being sent to a secure psychiatric unit with a chance of eventual release, but he doubted that outcome. He deemed the odds of release extremely low, yet admitted that if freed he might kill again. On March 25, 2011, Christopher Gribble faced the court, charged with first-degree murder, attempted murder, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, witness tampering, and conspiracy to commit burglary. The accused entered a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity. Yet the jury found Christopher Gribble sane beyond doubt. Judge Gillian Abramson sentenced him to life in prison without any chance of parole. At the trial, David Kates delivered a heart-wrenching victim impact statement. He recounted the unbearable pain of reliving Kimberly Kates' murder, each detail hitting like a fresh wound. He described hearing his wife's final breath, the screams of his daughter, and witnessing the mutilation of Jamie Kates' once perfect body. In 2013, Christopher Gribble launched an appeal against his sentence. That effort, however, faded into silence, yielding no change. Today, he remains confined within the walls of New Hampshire State Prison, serving his sentence. On March 21, 2014, Judge Abramson handed down a sentence of at least 30 years to William Marks. Her words cut deep. He had planned, watched, and reveled in the unspeakable horrors inflicted on an innocent mother and child. William had pleaded guilty to burglary conspiracy to commit burglary and acting as an accomplice to first-degree assault. James Marks. William's father later expressed profound devastation. He confessed that if he could rewind time, he would change everything, acknowledging the heartbreak all parents endure in such a nightmare. In a startling revelation, William testified that he and his father had schemed to sell inside details of the homicide to the press. James Marks wrestles with the reality of his son's involvement in the deadly home invasion, a nightmare born from a pact to kill anyone inside. Looking at old photos of young William James wonders where it all went wrong. He admits to having warned his 18-year-old son about the dangers of falling in with the wrong crowd. His concerns grew whenever William was with that group. James insists he never wanted his son to associate with them, fearing the boy would disappear or not come home. Most of that worry centered on Steven Spader, whom James Marks refers to simply as Stevie. In recent times, William reportedly tried to distance himself from Spader. He was making an effort to break away, as James observed. Calls from Stevie appeared on William's phone, but he refused to answer, evading his persistent friend. Spader often pressured William for rides lacking his own vehicle, and William found it difficult to say no. James Marks does not excuse his son's actions, but he believes William was caught in the orbit of people whose personalities overshadowed him. He described the situation as a struggle of self-esteem and control, not physical coercion. James makes clear he is not seeking sympathy. To him, low self-worth cannot justify the charges William faces, or the horror wrought upon the Kates family. He acknowledged the wrongness of William's deeds and extended his heartfelt sorrow to the victims. Faced with the enormity of the crime, he wondered aloud what words could offer comfort. Meanwhile, in March 2014, Quinn Glover also received sentencing. He was handed a minimum of 20 years, convicted of robbery, burglary, and conspiracy. Judge Abramson noted he bore the least involvement in this chilling thrill-killing. Quinn expressed deep remorse, telling the court he could never forgive himself for his despicable actions. Both he and William now serve time in separate Vermont prisons. In April 2011, Autumn Savoy was sentenced to 5 years for concealment of evidence and fabricating an alibi. By May 2015, he was granted early release. After prison, Autumn returned home to his parents and took on 2 jobs at the Mall of New Hampshire. In December 2022, he shared on social media his plans to start a podcast aimed at helping others navigate the justice system and rebuild their lives. January 2010 marked the birth of Steven Spader's daughter. Tragically, she was taken from her mother at just 5 days old and placed under the care of Steven's parents. Steven has since penned letters to his parents pleading for visits with his child and promising to become the best father he can be. In February 2014, Steven Spader was transferred to New Jersey State Prison. 3 months later, he suffered serious injuries in a prison fight. In recent years, he claims to have found peace with God and describes himself as nearly happy. His routine now includes working out limiting carbohydrates and daily calls with his parents. They visit him weekly, often bringing new photographs of his daughter, a poignant reminder of what he's lost. Following Kimberly Kates' death, the Amherst Country Club community established a memorial scholarship in her name. Each October, a golf tournament raises funds for students struggling to afford education, continuing Kimberly's legacy of generosity. Since 2009, the Kimberly Kates Memorial Scholarship Fund has amassed over $250,000, providing hope and opportunity to many. Contributions were also made in Kimberly's memory to the Vernon Village School, Boston Children's Hospital, and St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. 2 years after her murder, Governor John Lynch signed the Kimberly Kates Law. This legislation included home invasions resulting in murder among the criteria for the state's death penalty. However, with New Hampshire abolishing the death penalty in 2019, the Kimberly Kates Law was effectively nullified. Just 3 weeks after her mother's murder, Jamie Kates returned to school on a part-time basis, despite enduring trauma and severe injuries that changed her life forever. Jamie excelled academically and shined in sports, especially hockey. In a candid moment, Jamie described the normalcy of their sibling banter, exchanging playful jabs to fill the silence. She also proudly mentioned having earned her driver's license. When asked if driving scared her, she laughed it off and shared her current passion for field hockey. Jamie revealed plans to play lacrosse again in the spring. In 2019, a decade after the brutal attack that left her maimed, she spoke openly with WMUR-TV about her life today. Now a college senior, Jamie studies public health at the University of North Carolina. She expressed her enduring love for hockey and a determination to live each day as if it were her last. After graduation, she began working at the Southern New Hampshire Medical Center, building a future from the ashes of her past. Kimberly Kates was on the cusp of completing her public health studies, with graduation looming just ahead. Only one internship remained, at the University of North Carolina. Wilmington, she played field hockey, a passion she had recently rekindled. This pursuit brought joy amid her busy life. She lived each day as though it were her last. In the small town of Amherst and Mount Vernon, and even across the state, a wave of support had united the community in the wake of tragedy. Kimberly Kates' wake was held at the Smith-Heald Funeral Home in Milford, New Hampshire, a somber gathering marked by grief. Her funeral service followed at the First Congregational Church in Mount Vernon, where friends and family came to pay their respects. She was laid to rest at Green Lawn Cemetery just off Main Street. Kimberly's loss left David and Jamie in enduring grief. How can we prevent such senseless violence? Share your thoughts below, like and subscribe to my channel.